Hi there, my name's Gracie Kay, and for my extended project, I decided to animate part of a musical. To begin with, I completed my personal audit during the summer, and then I moved on to making a mood board inspired by some of my favourite things. Both were great ways to get me brainstorming ideas and ask myself deeper questions that I hadn't thought of asking myself. I chose to animate the musical Falsettos because it's my favourite. It has themes of growing up, family, and especially relevant today, disease, loss, and uproar against the government. Over the course of my EP, my project has evolved considerably. It's progressed from learning how to animate to becoming a heavily nuanced piece of art in which I link the responses of the government to the AIDS epidemic with the disastrous effects the government had dealing with COVID-19. In the beginning, my only goal was to gain skills in animation, but by the end I think not only did I achieve that goal, but several more that I hadn't even thought of in the beginning. Next, I made a mind map. Each web was a strain of my bigger interests, for example, art, swimming, and musical theatre. In each of these I expanded my knowledge and blurted out all my ideas into subgroups, and eventually came up with my idea to animate a musical. I then had to amend my goal on animating a whole musical quite quickly. Even though I started researching very early on in my project, I didn't account for a few factors that would slow me down. For example, because of the pandemic, I couldn't watch the show live and ask the actors questions, and as I had never animated before, I didn't know how time-consuming the whole process would end up being. If I were to do my EP project again, I would choose a set number of songs I would start animating from the beginning, compared to how I later had to change my project from animating the whole musical to just a few songs. I think this would have stressed me out a little less in the long run. Next, I made a Pinterest board dedicated to falsettos. I explored lots of different artists that really resonated with me. Doing this before I started my artifact really helped me develop an idea of the style I wanted to use to draw my animations in, and didn't mean that I had any style inconsistencies later on. I then proceeded to practice drawing each of the characters. I did a realistic study of each character, and then I showed the process I went through to draw them. Following this, I wrote an essay for each character. The essay was an insight into each of the characters, showing the things that I rarely get a chance to think about. Then I made a small mood board for each character inspired by them. I managed to make these themed off of my new improved animation style. Simple lines with lots of focus going into line weight. I made a survey after this, which for me was one of the most crucial pieces of evidence going into me making decisions on which songs I should focus on, research, and later animate. But I think my favourite source was a video called How Falsettos Redefines Masculinity. I really enjoyed the video as it went through not only the basics on each character but also more psychological depths, discussing the politics of the time and how they related to the musical. I learnt a lot from this video, including how it was inspired by true stories of so many LGBTQ people living with HIV and AIDS, and how it was one of the first pieces of media that redefined stereotypes of gay men and lesbians at the time, showing them as real people with flaws and regaining qualities. After I chose the song I was going to animate, I proceeded to download the sheet music from MuseScore, annotating each piece of music with ideas and thumbnails. This was certainly a strength of mine, showing how I plan for each of my individual animations. My thumbnails and notes on each song, along with my early mood board and Pinterest board I created, shows how I really thought through each option before starting animations. After this, I found references. This one here I found off of YouTube. I then draw each frame, putting them all together to make my animation. Here's a sped up version. One problem I had to face was that my iPad broke for a month and I had to work on other parts of my extended project instead of the animation part. Although I enjoyed animating, I used this time to my advantage, catching up on things I didn't have time for earlier. My weaknesses were pointed out to me in my AO1-AO2 project review done by my friend Sophie. It was useful in showing me how I could do some more work to improve. Having a second set of eyes on my project was really great for nitpicking, and she gave me excellent suggestions. Like, for example, I hadn't done enough work on my research, and that at times the research I did do seemed a little irrelevant. This really gave me great ideas to work on, showing the animating process, shown here, and the app I used to put all my animations together. Something I really improved on, however, were my time management skills. I managed to successfully meet all of my deadlines with extra amounts of time to spare. I broke all my goals down into much smaller ones, and that really changed my outlook from overwhelmed to excited. I did this by making an overview timeline. Then I proceeded to make a month-by-month general plan prompted by my PPR. Finally, at the end of each month, I made a plan detailing everything I had to finish that month and what I needed to carry forward from the previous month to the next. As shown here, I spent a few weeks trying to use Adobe After Effects instead of iMovie for putting together my frames, but I found it difficult. This was because the software was much more professional and complex than I was used to, and overall it ended up taking too much time. If I had more time, I think I would have learned how to use After Effects because it could have ended up with a much more professional looking video. But in hindsight, I think what I managed to achieve with the free software iMovie was good enough in the end. I then made a few social media accounts to get more opinions on my animations and how I could improve them. I started with making an Instagram account. This was good as it showed insights into each post and how many people liked it along with how many accounts were reached. Then I made a YouTube account. This was especially helpful as it had very in-depth analytics into each animation. I got to see how many hours were watched, at what point people tended to click off of each video, and many pages upon pages of research that I couldn't have done myself. Finally, I thought I would share my favourite part from each of my 9 finished animations. Watching them back to back like this really shows my improvement.
And he's sweet, and he's mean. Something that kills. Hey, life's a sham, and every move is wrong. We've examined every move as we move along.
My son's distressing.
My father's snide.
I'm convalescing.
He's morbid and dissatisfied.
He filled my coats with candies and notes with, will you be my
Will you be my Valentine?
We had fights and games. Marvin called us funny names.
I stammer. I sing a rondelay.
Homosexuals, women with children, short insomniacs. We're a teeny tiny band. Lovers come and lovers go. Lovers live and die fortissimo. This is where we take a stand. Welcome to Falsetto Land.